Welcome to a very well prepared, another minutiously prepared episode of Standard Deviation Podcast.
Yes, we are known for being organized.
Massively organized.
Yes.
This is
Should
a,
we should we share some of our secrets, like all the research that we do prior to recording? Because I'm sure that there are other podcast hosts
yeah.
out there who look at us with envy and they want to know how we do all of this. Like, how are we so fluent, and how do we know so much about our guests, and how do we have so many good questions? Like, what's our process?
We do NLP research because we do this NLP research and we get like topics
Yeah,
automatically. Using Gen AI to get topics generated bespoke
yeah, yes.
based on our
Bespoke, well,
guests.
well used. That's a good word to use here.
Yeah, that's the word. And
Yeah.
before every episode, we have like this routine and ritual.
Mm-hmm.
We meet like 2 hours in advance to
Mm-hmm.
plan everything.
Yes.
We're constantly scheming over who to get next. So yeah, make
Yes.
sure if you wanna do as good as we do with the podcast, AI is the answer again.
One day we'll write the book about this, and then we'll explain
Yeah.
our process thoroughly.
So I see you, Simo, on your blog. You're glowing with the Google tag, with GTM, with everything that's going on. What's happening? What's good
Oh
there?
yeah. I think I'm just happy that I finally got around to writing about them. So I started the articles in May because that's when I first started playing with them. And I've been like, the entire server-side tagging course has been bottlenecked because of those releases, because I need to show how the new Google tag works for server container dispatch. So I'm really, really happy that they find. So Google, when you're listening to this recording, you're hopefully already accessing this stuff in your container. But Google has released the new Google tag in Google Tag Manager, which is basically a rewritten user interface for the configuration tags. And they've also released the new settings variables, which make it easier to configure settings across GTM. So I'm kind of giddy because it's, many people have been saying that GTM for web is just, it's abandonware at this point. Nothing's happening. And I've been kind of just laughing inside because I know for a fact that that's never been the case. And they're doing incremental releases all the time, but these are actually pretty big things. And hopefully now that they've gotten these big things out of the way, they can start working with incremental updates again. But yeah, that's just been preoccupying me. But that's just boring GTM stuff. You, on the other hand, have written like a novel, or a
Another
master's
novel.
thesis on your latest and greatest hobby. What would that be? Do you want to tell us a little bit about it?
Yeah, man, I've been obsessing about natural language processing, and I think after the technical marketing guide, which I think is still one of my best works, I released this natural language processing guide, which gives you like a crash course in what natural language is, what natural language processing is, and just as you noticed, and we talked about this before, I'm giving a lot of references on where you can actually learn more about this if this is your topic. But like, yeah, I just got bored of I'm over the whole Bayesian versus frequentist conversations. I'm over prioritizing everything to run an A/B test on the website on an app. Like it's way more to that, to experimentation than just running an A/B test. I'm not saying
Mm,
they're not important. So hold your forks. Don't come at me yet. I'm not saying A/B testing is not important, but it's just one task in a huge, program that where you can do a lot of things. So just being, I think of the future beyond, like obviously making sure you have a clean implementation and great tracking, which is what you help people to do. Just want to give people like the idea of going a bit further than that and look at unstructured data and realize that now it's very accessible. Like it costs you like $15 to go and use GCP and use the NLP AI and Vertex AI, and to run you just need to know a bit of SQL. But even if you don't, you can use ChatGPT and write the query. Like it's that
mm,
possible. And I had a great talk with Michael. I'm gonna mess up his last name, of course, Agard,
that's
yesterday.
good.
Yes. And we were talking about this, and I was just telling him like everything is so accessible right now, where you can actually do customer research and a data analysis at scale using all these tools like Google Cloud Platform, Hugging Face. The transformers from Hugging Face are good. So if you're curious about NLP, I'm gonna link this in the comment section. But the TLDR, it just helps you understand the voice of the customer better, and it's not gonna help you activate the data just by running an A/B test. You can do better paid search, you can do better ads, you can do better um, product releases, more
Mm.
intelligent product releases. The coolest thing that I'm working on right now, and I'm sharing it with you for the first time, Google Search Console, looking at search queries, like things that are positive and negative in search. For instance, is this brand a scam? I'm worried about this, like looking at all the negative type of search queries and the way people are researching a brand.
Yeah.
Basically, you will understand what's the cognitive dissonance a new visitor comes to with on the website for the first time. So knowing how you're perceived is going to help you make that website experience better, but also like improve your ads copy, improve your targeting. So not a lot of people know that, but the search console, it's a treasure trove
That's
with
really
all
cool.
those. Yeah, so right now this is what I'm working on, API from the search console, trying to make the natural language processing. I'm doing sentiment analysis, but I'm also doing this thing called complaints classification using zero shot classification. And I
Mm.
know this is a lot of words if you never listened to or never had to do this, but basically, if you know you already have some problems, you can do two, like when it comes to NLP, you can do two things. You can explore or you can exploit. So explore is when you're just looking there and finding out shit. It's just like you're doing
Mm.
explorations in GA4, you're just trying to see what's going on there. But to exploit is if you have like some specific issues, and you can make those issues like a topic, and then you use this pre-trained model that are available for free on huggingface.co. And then you use that model to recognize those topics inside reviews, inside social media, inside search queries, and you can see what's the volume, what's the gravity, what's the magnitude. And hopefully this is going to give you a very good prioritization model to know what to address first and how. But for Google Search Console, it's fucking amazing. Like that's the most exciting stuff I've done in a long time. But I don't want to like take over with this because I'll probably talk for
No, no,
three
that's really
hours.
cool. But
But
what?
yeah,
So can you just share before we head on to the actual meat of this
yeah, we
today's
have a
talk?
guest.
We actually do have a guest, but can you share like a use case, like what you used it for this, and what were the actual benefits of this, compared to like doing just manual analysis?
Yeah, so I actually, this is the case study that I shared also at Measure Summit. So I have a client which is a global beverage retailer. They have an app, but they also have restaurants across the world. And this client, we are developing their app besides doing data and media for them. So they came to me and asked me, Juliana, like, I want to know, like, we invest a lot of money, obviously, in developing the app, but like, I want to know what is the user experience actually, like, what are the biggest problems of the app. So these guys have 500,000 reviews in the Google App Store and the iOS Store. So I said, like, for sure, I can go through, to these reviews and figure it out. But like, there has to be an easier way to go through these reviews
Mm.
and be able to see, like, what's the sentiment, like the brand sentiment in different regions, and obviously what are the issues. So the first thing I did was this sentiment analysis thing, and I used app figures, which collects all the reviews, and I used the API to send the reviews. Not before, I used the data loss prevention thingy, where I removed all the personal identifiable data, so no personal identifiable data arrived in the Google Cloud. And then I used some cloud functions and Vertex AI to be able to transform and analyze these reviews, and then just send the results in Looker Studio. It's not great, Looker Studio, I'll tell you that. It's probably there's better ways to visualize data, but that's like the budget, and we use Looker Studio. So I was able to get the sentiment score and the magnitude. So the sentiment analysis is just basically looking at a sentence, and based on the words that are in that sentence, you are scoring either positive, neutral, or negative. Like if I say this app is terrible, that would be a negative score because these models are trained to recognize negative words and positive words, but they are also capable of recognizing neutrality. So, like if you say this app sucks, but I still like something, then the machine will know it's a neutral. So we did that, but then we said this is not enough because it doesn't give us enough, knowledge about what's going on. So like the actual use case is when we did use the zero class classification, and we knew from the client that there are some issues with login and payment. So we built like some sort of small vocabulary with all the used words that can be possible within, and we use this pre-trained model from Hugging Face to identify the probability of those things to be mentioned in the review. So when we deliver this to the client, they basically had like a prioritization model of what
Hmm.
are the biggest issues to fix. Some things were like just do it. Like for instance, they
Yeah.
had issues with forgot password, and they had no idea about that. And now with the payment, we realized that a lot of people are requesting for Apple Wallet. So we have like
Right.
a very good statistical significance that this should be the next feature. So now they're working with us to do that. And
Right.
obviously for A/B testing, we noticed that there's a bit of an issue with onboarding in the app. So now we're gonna try different types of tests to improve the onboarding. So it's been really cool. Like this is one of the use case, and the
Yeah.
second one, which I'm not gonna go into detail, is this one with Google Search Console. It's helping a lot with paid search, and
Yeah.
knowing like what are these negative keywords, it helps us with the landing page optimization because we can improve the copy. Like it's basically before somebody goes to a website for the first time, all you have as a brand is your digital footprint. So it's your social media, your
Mm.
reputation, and so on. And knowing what these problems are before a user lands to the website, it gives you some sort of competitive advantage to give like the proper environment to for that user to be successful. But I'm gonna stop.
No, no, that's really cool. Are you going to do like a publish the case study in the Media Monks blog or something?
I hope that next year, when I know, and these are good awards, done very good by Tan Whistling.
Mhm.
He has this experimentation awards, and I've been low key dreaming about that. Participating into those awards. So this is not like a classic A/B testing, case study. It's more like data science, but it's also like affecting
Yeah.
experimentation in different ways. So I plan to apply to those awards next year with this case study, and hopefully, if the client approves for me to share this, and you guys will hear who the client is, you're gonna be like, "Whoa, Juliana, that's really cool."
Mhm. That's
So
awesome.
yeah,
Really, really cool.
hopefully, yeah, it's been fun. It's good to get away from GE4 for some time being.
I bet. It's good for all of us.
Yeah, but that's it. I don't want to bore anyone because this can come very like we can easily go in 3 hours about the topic.
Yeah. So are we
So
going to go to our guest or do you want to?
before we go to our
Oh,
guest, Simo, don't think you have gotten rid of the most embarrassing time of the
oh, yes,
podcast.
of course. Oh, yes. Here we go.
Right. There you go. Don't tell me I don't create enough, like
Yeah.
mystery.
They have to pay something to Queen for that drum riff.
I'm
Yeah, that
using
was like such a blatant.
it's like one of those songs when you go to this conference and speak, and they're using like
Yeah.
this weird songs to get you on stage, and I
Yeah.
swear that's exactly like
I
the
bet.
one.
Yeah. Oh God.
You know what
Yeah.
this
So
means.
yeah. Hey, it's Sima from Simmer again. I don't have that much to share except I have just completed the last things with our update to the server-side tagging course. So hopefully, maybe even as early as tomorrow, we'll have it out. And yeah, it's a complete reshoot and rewrite of our most popular, to me, the most important course. So I'm really, really happy to get it out there. We've there's a lot of completely new content, of course, related to how things have changed over the last 3 years. Um, but there's also I've removed a lot of stuff because I didn't think they
Mm,
contributed to the flow of the course, and it was just getting too bloated. And
yeah.
the removed stuff, before you get all huffy and puffy about it, not you, but the audience, we're probably going to release as blog posts, so it's going to be out
Oh.
there anyway, in one way or another. It's things like how to deploy on Azure, which is just a super complicated thing and requires so much upkeep to make sure that it always matches the new changes to the cloud platform. So if you are already enrolled in a server-side course, so prior to us releasing this upgrade, you will have the chance to update for free, or
Mm,
you can throw some pennies our way. So we have this pay what you want scheme in case you
That's
want
very
to.
generous of you guys.
Well, we promised that they would have access to the update, which in hindsight might not have been the best business decision, but I think it's the right thing to do for our students because it is essentially the same course but just with updated content. Um, but it did take a lot of time and a lot of work to get it done, and we want to keep keeping it fresh. So that's why we also added the little option that if you want to contribute to our pension fund, then feel free to do so. And as always, if you want to buy our individual courses and enjoy a little bit of a discount, we have the Standard Deviation Podcast special coupon code DEVIATE. That's DEVIATE for 10% off a single course purchase.
That's really cool. I've seen so many LinkedIn posts sharing the certificate for the server-side course in the latest period. Like a lot of people are on this, and
Yeah.
excited to hear feedback from. I know you don't like feedback, but
Yeah, I hate it. I still
unless
hate it.
unless it's positive.
I still no. I don't think I even like the positive stuff because I don't think that's genuine. I don't think that's genuine. So yeah.
Don't
But
give
hey, keep
Simo feedback,
yeah. Don't
please.
give me feedback. But give our CEO feedback. Like she will very much enjoy it. Um, anyway,
Cool.
we have a guest and we have
Yes,
an awesome guest. We're going to be talking about event tracking. We're going to be talking about his workbook.
product analytics. We're
We're
gonna
talking
talk
about
about a
product
lot of stuff.
analytics. This is Timo Dechau from Deep Sky Data and other
Yes,
places all over. So
let's get him now.
yay!
Woo-hoo-hoo-hoo!
We have Timo here finally. We had some technical difficulties. The lobby was
Yeah.
cold. There was no heating there, but
Yes.
he's now here. Welcome. How are you?
I'm quite well. I'm a little bit stressed out. I hate technical problems before recording
Yeah.
and starting.
Yeah,
So,
I'm sorry you had those. Yeah, it was
no, no.
the biggest browser in the world failed us. How is
Yes.
that possible?
That is true. And basically, like the big competition, at least like self-acclaimed
Yeah.
competition, Microsoft Edge solved the thing. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
They're good for something then. They do a lot of like if you've been following Edge's Twitter, they do a lot of like self appraising outreach these days. They're like, we're the best browser in the world, and I'm sure you are, but maybe somebody else should say it than you.
That's true. So at least like now they can pick the soundbite here to say at least it solved this session. So
Yeah, the most famous podcast in the world
yes,
just
exactly.
said, is using Edge. At least one of our guests is. So let's jump straight to it. Tell me, you've been working on a workbook, and as content creators, we're fascinated by that, and it's kind of a living project, and you're
Mhm.
still selling it to your audience. So how does it all work, and what is the workbook about?
So first, the workbook is about event data. It is, let's say, a very specific kind of topic, but something that is pretty close to my heart. And I always wanted to
Mm,
compile all the things that I think, doing for over 10 years
yeah,
into just one book. And initially, it started as how to fix tracking. So it was more specific to this kind of problem. But on the way, I discovered no, it's broader because like I'm
yeah,
usually like spending more time now to thinking about how future of event data will look like and so on. And I want to get it in there as well. So this was part
yeah,
one. This is like how the final topic basically developed over
yeah,
time. And as you said, like it's a living thing. This is another thing. I was struggling a bit how I should approach this. So I definitely want to do it self-publishing because I wanted
yeah,
to have as much control as possible. I wanted to have it as a workbook, and workbook means it's like uh, it's more hand on and should have at
yeah,
least like two ways to read this thing. So on the one hand, you can flip through and find stuff that is useful for you at this specific point of time, but you can also just read it. So it's
mm,
like, and this is like how it's built. It has a lot of, let's say, illustration where if you are a visual person like myself, this is like your approach. You can go through and can see, okay, this is interesting. Maybe I read a little bit more. Or you can be, let's say, I read from A to Z and go from the beginning to the end. And so because of
for,
that, I wanted to
yeah,
control it. And so this is
yeah,
like the reason why
yeah.
I started out.
But, but that's really interesting because you now have a book that doesn't have an ending yet. And
Yeah,
you're probably not entirely sure what it's going to look like when it's
no.
complete. So I'm wondering, like, how do you negotiate that? I completely understand having like a volume that can be both a reference guide and something that you can read through. But don't those two approaches require a bit different style of writing. Like if it's a reference, you can't really do too many internal references. You can't
Yeah.
say that, as we mentioned, in the previous chapter, because I might be just jumping into your chapter. And now that you don't know how it's going to end, it's also difficult to say that, as we'll talk more in an upcoming chapter. So like, do these things preoccupy you? Because from like a control nerd point of view, I would be totally terrified about the prospect of doing something like this. But
Yeah.
maybe it's something that for you works in a more ad hoc or a fluent way. What do you like?
I think it's a mix. I would say like the reference use case is the dominant one.
Mm,
So and it's, I think it's more optimized for this kind of thing.
yeah,
And I definitely have an idea what will come. So there might be, let's say, one or two chapters that will just appear while I'm writing something. So it already
yeah,
happened before. So I discovered a chapter just when I was starting to write another chapter, because I thought, oh, look, if I talk about design, maybe I should
mm,
introduce how to basically audit
yeah,
a design, because like a design can be anything. A
yeah.
design in the end
I
is random.
yeah.
So
I love it how you describe, right? I discovered a chapter. It sounds like, you're just typing and suddenly, boom, you
yeah,
kind of
kind of.
wake up. What the hell did I just write? It's really cool. I think there are some, even like fiction writers who have that, like an epiphany, like, I had
Yes.
never even planned for this, but it just came out of my fingers. That's really
That's how
cool.
I live my life, Simo, every day
Yeah.
at the
Yeah, yeah,
just
It's
figure it out.
No, I think it's like it's kind of how my brain works, and
yeah,
so I discover gaps when I get along, and
yeah,
so and this is like how I do this, and this I think in the end was also like the decision to make it as a living
yeah,
document, because I figured out I cannot produce, let's say, a zero point 0.8 version,
mm,
8 version that I can say, okay, let's say this is like the first version, and I bring it out. So
yeah,
I really discovered, okay, I need this kind. And I mean, I'm a product person. I live by the feedback of the people.
yeah,
And it's not like that my inbox is flooding with feedback, but I get that. I get
yeah,
it from time to time. People writing, hey, this was really interesting. This is stuff that I miss a little bit, or so that I can basically put it in, and so this helps me.
that's really
So
interesting.
I have an end, so I know where it might end up at some point, but
But how are you
let's
going to
see.
stop yourself from editing, once you finish it, going back and maybe
Oh, that's
changing
easy.
something?
I'm someone who edits pretty rarely. Even like when I
Okay.
write Substack pieces, I know a lot of people do it like this. So basically, create a first version and then cut it down, even
Yeah.
like 30s. I usually don't do it. So I usually have, because like I work a lot with outlines. So I start with an outline first and then flesh it out.
Yeah.
And this is, I usually end up where I want to end up. And
Yeah.
so, yes, of course, I do correction type stuff and so on, editing, but I rarely go back to fix things. So
Yeah.
I think it happened one or two times now, the whole thing.
Yeah. So, first of all, thanks for the methodology talk. I think that was really, really interesting to hear how people approach this stuff. But let's talk about what you're actually writing about. So you're talking about event tracking and you're
Yeah.
talking about events. And now you're gonna, I'm gonna ask you the blue-eyed, naive question, like, what is there to write about? You just stuff happens on a site. You collect
Yeah.
that, you track that, you push it to the data layer, you add whatever semantic model makes sense at whatever time. So why is it more complicated than that?
I think you already mentioned, let's say, at least one of the problems is like technical events are super easy. They have a timestamp and they have a unique identifier. This is the beauty of it. I mean, and they're often like immutable. So like you just create a log of stuff that's happening. It's really nice. So the problem happens when we as humans try to give it a meaning. So people give an event a name, and there like the problems are starting, because like one name, and in the book I have this example with newsletter subscribed. Newsletter subscribe, when you go into your company and you ask 5 different teams, you ask the developers, you ask the marketing team, you ask the product team, what does it actually mean? They will start to describe what newsletter subscribe means to them, and I'm pretty sure you will have different kind of versions of it. So let's say developers might describe it from a technical standpoint. So for example, when a new record has been added to the subscriber table, if you handle the subscriptions yourself. And marketing would say if they end up in HubSpot and I can basically send emails to them. So you can end up with different kind of things, which is totally fine. I mean, this is the beauty and the madness of language.
Mm.
But this is one part that makes event design really complicated, to find a common ground. And the other problem that, and I think this was mostly like the trigger why I was starting to write this book, was like, I did event setups for over 8 years. And I always thought I do it in a good way. So I created this long tracking plan, sometimes even like in big projects with 120 unique different kind of events, because I thought this is covering everything. And yeah, you're shaking your head. So it's like, no, it's true. Because like one thing that I discovered, once we had everything implemented and I had teams working with the kind of data where I thought, hey, this is the best thing that you can get, they were still struggling to answer their questions. So there was some kind of gap. And I could always close this gap where I said, well, actually, for this business question, you need these two events. You combine them in this way and do it like this. But the gap was too much. For me, it was solvable because I was working in this every day. But let's say someone in a product or growth team, they work in this maybe one time a month or so, because like their main job is something different. And so I sat down and thought about, okay, how can we design event data that is so user friendly for people who are not working with this every day, so that they don't need this translation anymore. And so I started to then define events more from a business and product perspective, because this is where the people basically live every day. And this changed it a lot. So like when I was starting to define events really like from a product or business perspective or customer perspective, so taking the customer journey as a baseline, marketing and product teams immediately understood much easier how they should use this kind of stuff. And so this changed my whole approach how I design events. So not more from the application side, more from the business side. And then we look into the application where we can get the data from. And that frees you up as well. So you don't have to get it from a front end. So you can make a deliberate decision. So for example, maybe the newsletter subscribed event, I just pull from HubSpot webhook, because like this is basically like how marketing wants it. And so we just take the data from there. So it frees you up where you can get the kind of event stuff.
But it's the classic entity action thing, right? You know what is the entity you're looking for, and then what's the action of the specific thing. But
Yeah.
like to be able to write those, you need to know exactly what do you want to track, what is exactly that you want to measure. Like how do you tackle that with your clients? Because most of the times they like tracking everything. You know my opinions about that. That's why I was shaking my head, because I really don't agree with like let's track everything, because it's useless. Not saying in your case, but in general, like a lot of these metrics just go and die in a expensive dashboard. But like what are like the things you're teaching people when they're starting their measurement plans, like how they can condense and take the Marie Kondo approach, like if it doesn't spark joy, like don't do it.
So I think in the end, at least like one approach that helps is like you have, I would say, different levels of importance of event data. So let's say customer events across the customer journey, they're sometimes difficult because like there might be an event where you say, hey, they achieved the first value moment, which by definition is not really easy to define. So you have to sit down with product and so on. But these kind of events can help you to basically get a quick glance how your business and product is doing. So these are essential for any kind of report that you will create for the management, for strategy meetings and so on. So quite important. And once you have set them up, you can already do a lot of things, and you want to have them well monitored and so on because they are so important for you. And then let's say on the second level, you have product events, which is more like on a feature level. So you basically divide your product in 4-5 core features. So not like micro features, let's say core features, use them as an entity, and then basically define what you can do within this kind of feature. And then I have this third one, and this is basically like one of the tricks that I use, because there is always a use case where someone wants to know how many people clicked the X on the layover. No one in management and strategy will care about how many people click the X on the layover. But there are two desperate people in the product and UX team who wants to know, because they want to know if this kind of interaction makes sense. And so this is why I have some kind of catch-all interaction layer where we basically, let's say, define it on a very high level, like, I don't know, icon clicked and icon can be X. And then you basically define with the properties the context of it. And because these events are relevant in let's say, often like in a small time frame when these people work on this kind of interaction, and just for a specific set of people. But they're still relevant, and so you want to put them there, at least like let's say, the raw data.
So you have this like unbridled fallback event data set for discovery. Like
Yes.
we can take a look at that. It's not meant to make any sense if you're looking at it broadly, but you might have. Do you find yourself ever promoting some of those interactions to like the upper echelons of your event tracking when they seem to be more significant than they appear to be initially?
It definitely happens. I would not say it happens a lot, but it can definitely happen that you basically upgrade something.
Yeah.
And the nice thing is, like, for example, if you work with classic product analytics tools, and even in GA4, you can do the same now. You can basically take a raw event and can classify it, let's say, in a well-defined event. So so gives you kind of a refactoring layer on top of, let's say, raw event data.
Because I'm somebody who's always hated, measurement planning and writing elaborate designs and just
For good
anything that even
reasons.
reeks of the waterfall model, like being able to come to a project and say, these are the events you should track. So I'm more of a fan of doing this, like, let's just do a broad event collection and then start picking out the ones that make sense to me. And I found that really useful, especially in cases where it's not imperative to get perfect data immediately. And if you're working with like an agile software development cycle, then it's almost like understated that, that's okay. That's a fine approach. But I'm wondering, do you think it's possible to actually arrive at a decent tracking implementation that way? Or does there always need to be some kind of like a pre-planned component? Do you think that's too Wild Westy in a way?
No, I think you can. I think the important part that I discovered is, like, at some point you have to make it easy for people who are not yourself to work with this kind of stuff. So, I mean, you are capable of go back into the code and to even find out where the stuff is triggered. Most of the people cannot. And so I always have this scenario. So, for example, you're a product analyst. Come quick, let's say you are new to the team. You want to do some basic retention analysis. For retention, I need two events. So one that is starting the retention and one like which is measuring the coming back. And if it takes you a week to figure out which are the two events are really like suitable for this kind of job, then the setup has a problem, because this person should be able to do this in an hour.
Yeah.
And this is, I think, where the problem starts. Your approach totally makes sense. And I can definitely tell you, let's say in the setups that I fully own today and I handle myself, I basically have a huge amount of raw events that I collect from everywhere. I collect stuff from the front end, I collect stuff from CDCs, from databases logs, I collect it from APIs, from webhooks, and so on. And then I make the decision which one I basically upgrade to make it visible for any kind of analysis. And this gives me basically both worlds that you just described. So on the one hand, it gives me this Wild West where I can basically make sure that I get a lot of stuff somewhere, but I still translate it to make it easier to use.
But you're saying that you're in a privileged position because it's just you. You don't have to worry about stakeholders. You don't have to worry about and there's also things like data minimization policies and regulations that you might not have to worry about if it's a personal. So that makes a lot of sense.
But I still can control it. I mean, I still see this as a valid approach, especially like for bigger organization, especially like since you're now basically have the possibility to, let's say you aggregate all your event data in a data warehouse, and there you basically apply all the transformation reduction, so data reduction. So of course, like, I can reduce the things that I don't really need. And then I basically sync it up to any kind of analytics tool up there. And so I have a control about this.
Yeah, and obviously, like the more experienced you get, the more you have an intuitive sense of what is like the models in your mind. You know what makes sense for an e-commerce site. You know what makes sense for a banking site. You know what makes sense for a content site. So even if it looks super ad hoc-y and I'm just collecting stuff, you actually either subconsciously or actually, let me ask you, do you manage like a dictionary of taxonomy? So if you enter an e-commerce client, you always have this basic set of stuff that you'll want to implement with this semantic structure, or do you redesign it every time?
The interesting thing is, like, I mean, e-commerce is the best example. So you usually have a stack of, let's say, I don't know, 20 events that you usually
Yeah.
find on an e-commerce setup, and also like the same with properties. The big problem there is more like how much do you actually want to expose and implement, let's say from a
Mm.
property perspective, because I mean you can go wild. You have a lot of, let's say, product characteristica that might be interesting, and then you have more like the decision like, do I put this all in the front end? So because like it drives every developer crazy to do this, especially if you ask for things that are not visible on the website. So if you ask for
Mm.
things that is visible, it's easy for them because they already have it. But if they have to run, I don't know, 3 more API calls, it's
Yeah.
hitting the database again. No one is basically happy about it. So then you basically come in the situation to think about, okay, do I enrich it later or so? But yes, in the end, for e-commerce, for subscription handling, you always end up with the same kind of event types. So
And what do you think about, Google, for example, imposing their own, like, do you ever wonder where they come up with those semantic models? Because some of them just don't make any sense. Like if you look at the event dictionary that they recommend, use this event name with these parameters, and some of them just look relating to a website of the 90s or an e-commerce flow of like early Amazon. It's just so weird.
yeah, it is. I usually, so like when I do a Google setup, I do two implementations. So one, how I would like to have it, and then the second one, how Google wants to have it, so that we
To
have
keep the
both.
overlords happy.
Yeah, so it is because like some, let's say the Google stuff is feeding some standard stuff.
Yeah.
So I want to have these things. So of course, like, but then I make the translation, for example,
Yeah.
in Tag Manager to basically spit it out and say, okay, we have the same, but we send it twice. I
Yeah.
think the big question, I don't know how they, I think the big challenge that Google, of course, has, and at least like often people forget, is like they're serving the biggest kind of audience here. They're serving like us people who know this old world, like things, and maybe still want to have some stuff around. And then they have the mobile ones who, of course, like have these very, for people now, new event model, but for them it's kind of old school because it's around
Yeah.
for 12 years. And then you have the very simple marketing use cases, very complex e-commerce. I mean, it's crazy if you want to create this kind of, let's say, common thing in the middle that kind of works.
Yeah.
You end up with this.
And,
So,
and then you see people doing the Google thing, collecting stuff to GA4, then exporting it to BigQuery and doing an ETL and converting it to something completely different. Like, why not start with a different data model? And it's just, I don't know. It just somehow speaks of the great gravity that Google's stack has on our industry, and it's not always a good thing.
yes, yeah, yes, and no. I mean, the BigQuery thing would open up a lot of more doors where you would ask, like, okay, why do they do it like this? So why don't they just do a really, really good BigQuery event model? So I mean, there are
Mm.
examples out there that it just could have a look at and have some inspiration. So without naming them, but there are definitely good atomic event data tables somewhere from some kind of tool generated. And that
Yeah.
would be great if they would have done something like
Yeah.
this. And I mean, of course, you always, in every data stack, you always have some transformation in there. I mean, this is like the thing. So you cannot, I mean, this is the whole discussion right now. Like, where should this qualification happen? Should it happen at the root? Let's say where product
Mm.
engineers are implementing stuff.
Yeah.
So should they do it in a proper way that you don't have to do the work later on? Yes, maybe possible, but also have its challenges. And so I think there's no best way. In the end, it comes
No.
down to the organization. So if you really have a very good data engineering and analytics engineering team, they can handle a lot of stuff. They can handle a lot of
Yeah.
transformation in a very smart way. Then maybe you can live with that the events don't come in a really good shape or so, because you can still clean it up.
Yeah.
But yeah.
I liked you write. You have a Substack, and I remember you wrote about something called "What is Beyond Event Data," and I really like that article. And it's like very tied to this conversation.
Yeah.
I'm definitely gonna share it in the episode notes. It's very very good. But like, let's talk a bit about that part too before before the end. Like, let's talk about content creation. Like how we are also content creators, so we're also excited to hear about like what is your rituals for creating content. Like, where do you get the inspiration? Like, how is that feedback that you were talking about earlier affecting what you're talking about? Like, and I know you also have a podcast, and thank you for having me there as well. It was very fun when we did it together, called Better Together.
Yeah.
And just yeah, tell me about the content creation part.
Uh, First, I have to give a shout out to Simo because, I would not say you totally started it, but you definitely set a little bit like the thing that I wanted to achieve. Because your kind of content was the kind of content that I was always looking for in data. So I think what brought me into the content creation was like I was just missing the stuff that I wanted to have, and I saw it in other, let's say, in other
Mm.
disciplines. So I'm someone who has to learn very visually, and so like to understand kind of concepts and in front-end development, you really have these platforms where people just go in there and they do a screen share and they show how they implement stuff and they talk about it. I mean, the interesting part is they talk about it. So they let you live through their decision making. Okay, I'm doing this implementation this kind of way because of this. And this was the stuff that was missing for me in data and broad data. So not even like, let's say, for events, but data stacks, how to create data models and so on. And so this is where I started out with video. This was, I think, the first content that I did, and then ventured into text because like I was not so confident with text. And it took me basically a year to find my way to write, for example, Substacks. So for everyone out there who's struggling, so keep going. After some time, it will come. So you will basically, so at some point I found the kind of, let's say, topics I want to write about and the kind of style that I want to write about. And it was like by reading other stuff and at some point thinking, okay, maybe I want to go a bit more in this kind of direction. And ideas is not a big problem. So usually like the Substack is about data as the industry. So what's happening there. And yes, I have some focus on events and product analytics, but I also right now try to write about, let's say, data stacks in general and so on. So usually like the topics are not so hard. It's more like the angle that I'm trying to find. So I want to find a unique angle on a specific kind of thing. So this might take a little bit longer. And one thing that really helped me is like to find the right tool. So I have a tool which is called LogSec, and it's basically an open source tool for note taking. And it has this approach, and I think some people know it maybe from Roam research, where you basically put all your stuff in bullets, and you can have different kind of hierarchy for bullets and so on. And as I said, like I'm someone who's sketching out a lot, and so like I can just sketch out my first idea and then I can basically move it and move it around. And then the good thing is like because like I cannot focus on something for an hour, so I can just do it for 10 or 15 minutes. This is perfect for me. So I can
Mm.
just do 15 minutes on some kind of part in there, then I move out again, then I come back after 20 minutes and do another 10 minutes.
Yeah.
So and this kind of structure in the end helped me a lot to get to, let's say, the right pace to really at least put something out every 2 weeks. I still want
So
to land at every week, but this is super hard. So
it's great. No, 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 no. It's gonna hit into your creativity as well, and you'll be completely tapped out. That's me saying from experience. You
possible.
might be different, but so does this tool? So you put the bullets there, and then you press a button, and ChatGPT writes the article for you, right?
No, no.
Oh man.
It sometimes does. Let's say the summary for LinkedIn because like
Yeah.
sometimes I think, oh God, I wrote the article and I don't want to write the summary now.
Yeah.
For this, no, actually not. ChatGPT is more like this. Let's say if I want to reuse content somewhere else, there it's perfect. I mean,
Yeah.
like to write me a summary of this video. I mean, I even got this whole thing now to take a 5-minute video and write a 2,000 word blog post out of it, which still is quite okay. So it has. So it's kind of an assembly line already.
Mm.
So I think there it's really interesting, but for the original stuff, no. So it's
Yeah.
like I need my kind of angle, and I
I
have
might
a
be interested in that too, because I have a lot of videos that I'm lazy to write about.
no, it takes some work to find how to prompt it,
Yeah.
but in the end, like it's just a sequence of 5 or 6 prompts, and you can use something like I don't know LangChain to basically orchestrate everything, and yeah, no, it's crazy what you can do with this kind of stuff.
Mm.
But I still believe. I mean, this is like, and this is the interesting thing about content is like, so you have a lot of, and we all I think easily can agree of this. You have this, let's say, fast food, easy to consume kind of content. So the
Yeah.
obvious one. So like here are the 5 things that you should do better in your Google Analytics reporting
I
setup or
hate those
whatever.
posts. Sorry.
Yes. Yeah, of course you click them because like you always think, okay, there might be something that I missed so far.
No,
So
no, I said I hate those posts.
you
So
hate, I
here,
thought you
yeah,
click
I
these
hate
posts.
those posts so much. This is 10 things.
It's
I'm
hate and love,
sorry.
so I still click on them. So I definitely get triggered by them pretty easily.
You got
And
FOMO.
and it's fine. I mean, you can scan over it and you can say, yeah, so but I mean, of course, like we're all looking for these
Yeah.
things where people bring in, let's say, you have an existing problem, you just bring a different kind of angle into this. Say, okay, I take it from this kind of approach. And of course, like this, I think this takes a while until you can really do this. So for me, it took me 8-9 months to get to this thing, to find these kind of angles. And it was a lot of listening to other people doing this stuff. So for me, for example, a lot of listening to Ben Thompson. So like he was like doing business analyst pieces, and he's writing every day. I mean, he's super crazy, and he's doing this for years. But to really like let's say listening or reading his stuff from a standpoint to learn how he's approaching this kind of topic, that at least teach me a lot how I can take a common thing, maybe also like a common theme, but let's say step 2 steps to the left and then look from there or from to a different kind of lens. And so this helped.
It's really cool.
It
Well, where
is.
can people find you and read this content? Well, share with us like what
You
have
have so many
going on.
different ventures. Just
Yeah,
I
go
have.
through them all. Now's your
go through
chance.
them
And we're
all
gonna
right
add them
now.
all to our video
Oh
notes,
my
of
God.
course.
Yes.
Yeah.
High
Okay.
click-through rate in our video notes. Just know
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, so let me start. So I started out on LinkedIn, so I mentioned it first. And I still do some stuff on LinkedIn, but not so extensively like I did in the past. But I still try to do it because LinkedIn has a very good feedback channel, so people are really quick to answer. Then I have my YouTube channel where I would like to post more often, but I still I try to do specific kind of pieces. So for example, what are segment alternatives? What are mixed panel alternatives? Not like that you replace the two, but you understand how these tools work, and maybe you don't get the right value out of it because you don't use it. But if you still want to move on, these are, let's say, 4 or 5, and this might be helpful. So this I do on YouTube. Then I have on timodechau.com. So this is my page. So there you can also find the Substack. And so on Substack, I write these more like different perspective kind of pieces, and then you also find the book there, so you can order it. And the nice thing is, like, because it's a living document, every second week you get 20 new pages. So we had this in the old days in Germany in the supermarket. We had this continuous book that you could write always like the next 10 pages in the supermarket, and you could put it like in a big folder, and then in the end you had this whole book. But because you missed half of it because like you forgot to buy it, here it's nicer, so you get 20 new pages and you get this thing before as well. So I think and then we have Better Together. So Better Together is every 2 weeks. It's a live show where I try to find out why product and data doesn't really work a lot more together, which I still don't understand. So for me, it's a no-brainer that you can do product development with data, but I think it's definitely underserved. So it should happen a lot more. And this is what we're trying to figure out.
For sure, and make sure you check out all the notes in the episode. But know that his Substack is really cool. I actually spent time reading through it,
That's
and I
nice.
learned a lot of cool things. So thank you so much for coming and sharing. All this stuff with us today. It was really nice to have you. And let's reconvene in another very minutiously planned episode.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for having me, and I will keep the edge here on the computer. So once we come together, so that
Did you hear Microsoft? Did you hear?
Yeah, we found an edge case for Edge. So like,
I have the drums somewhere here. Oh no! Well, okay, that actually works quite nicely. So and be sure to check out Timo's workbook that we've been talking about.
Yeah.
It's available on his site, and one day when it will be complete, will there be a paper copy, by the way? It will always
this is a good question.
Yeah.
Maybe yes, if I figure out how to do it in a proper way. And some people sent me 1 or 2 links. I might check them out. I guess I want to have a paper copy at some point.
That
sounds
cool.
good.
Thank you.
Cool. Thank you for
showing up.
See you guys next time.